Hello Facebookers, I haven't been on here for ages and I thought I would do a little live whilst I wait for a client, and then we're going to do a one-to-one soul session as part of my Align course. So everyone is doing one-to-one sessions this week, and we're catching up with, well, we've already done inner children, right, your inner child connection, and this week is all about the wonder child. So we're looking at who you came into the world as before you were conditioned out of being it. So this is an interesting week. So I'm looking forward to hearing what's going on for people. But before that, I really want to talk about vulnerability. Hello, Ibrahim. Hello. Yeah, this word has been coming up a lot for me in my own world, and also in the world of my clients. And, you know, just synchronicities happen that way, don't they? It's always like you're just living life and people keep talking about the same thing. So there's been lots of chat about vulnerability, and I really want to pull this word out and really sort of lay it as a foundation for any of you who struggle with connection, struggle in relationships, struggle to connect to yourself, right? So I'm kind of just thinking that my brain is sort of firing off. I'm trying to think where to start. Basically, your vulnerability, your ability to be vulnerable with other people can contribute to your ease in being vulnerable with yourself, and vice versa. So vulnerability is like it's the foundation, you know? It's the flower bed. It's where you plant your seeds. You can't have true connection with others, and you can't have true connection with yourself if you have an inability to be vulnerable. Now, what is vulnerability? Because I want to discuss that. A lot of people listen to, you know, their fears and hide them away. So this can be an element of vulnerability where, you know, we don't want to show people our stuff. We don't want to show people what we are experiencing. I spoke to a client of mine yesterday who absolutely has this going on where she doesn't want to express that she feels vulnerable. She wants to give people her, best version of herself. So she's not willing to show people really what's going on underneath. How often are we all doing that? How often are we walking about pretending that we feel okay when we don't? We feel like shit. How often are we saying, someone asks us, how are you? And we go, oh yeah, all good, I'm fine, when really we're struggling with something. So this is one side of vulnerability, where we have some pain points or some emotion that we don't know how to navigate. And instead of finding someone that we can communicate this with so that we can actually gain a better understanding, right? You might have to pick your people carefully when you do this, by the way. You don't want to be maybe opening yourself up to people who are going to just meet you in a shallow place. If you've got some kind of heavy emotion going on, you need some people who can help you to be pulled out of it a little bit, to see it from a broader view, a more universal perspective. But it's essential that you allow yourself to be able to go there and talk to somebody who can help hold that space for you, right? So this is actually part of the work that I do. I make myself a safe space for other people to come to me and express to me the deep, dark secrets that they hold within, that they're really struggling with. They're struggling to communicate to their families. Now, there is an element of this shade of vulnerability, let me say. Because one of the elements with this type of vulnerability, which is what we perceive to be the negative aspects of vulnerability, is that there are some people who are inherently stuck in it. And it can become, very difficult for other people to be around this type of person. So you need to look at your vulnerability and ask where it's coming from. So most of the time, if someone is vulnerable and they are feeling negative, right? I don't even like the word negative, but say they're feeling their shadow, right? Their shadow self. There's lots of pain. Their inner child is freaking out and they don't know where to go with it. Then that's okay. Their inner child is asking for attention, right? Depression, anxiety, all of these things can be really a calling from your soul to up level, right? There are too many people, you know, really going out and just taking pills straight away without asking, is there something else going on in their world where they're maybe missing something, or a fear has taken over and they don't know how to step forward. Now, I'm not saying that all depressed people shouldn't be taking antidepressants. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that if you go to get help from a doctor, that's what usually happens as a first port of call before they really do much. They'll ask you a set of questions. They'll give you some pills. There's not really much help, you know, to look at your life in balance and to find out if there's something else going on. You know, maybe you are surrounded by people who are maybe not the best for you, and that's actually what's going on. It's not really that you have depression kind of thing. But there is another flavor of vulnerability where your ego is actually involved in this. And the ego is making you feel pretty crap about yourself in order to keep you from stepping up into your true power and to keep you from your light. So, you know, for those of you who feel like you've been in a funky, depressed attitude for a long time, you will probably find your inner child is very lonely and your ego now has you in victim mentality. So this is one side of vulnerability. But the other side of vulnerability in the positive is actually really about connecting to your truth and vocalizing it, speaking your truth at regular intervals. Now, I don't mean when you just get pissed off. I don't mean that, although it can mean that. But I don't just mean that. I mean learning to communicate in a way that's really effective. Yes, this makes so much sense. What bit? I hope all of it. Right? But so this other part of vulnerability is the ability to communicate emotions that are asking you to step forward, are asking you to step up, are asking you to honor your boundaries, like to set healthy boundaries, right? This part, right, really learning to speak your truth. Speaking your truth is one of the pillars of becoming a conscious, aware person. Speaking your truth in a compassionate, honoring way for all parties, right? Yes, all of it. Awesome. So yeah, speaking your truth in a way that is not you joining in with someone in anger, or you becoming a victim and saying, oh, you hurt me, oh, you know, and doing all of that. Like really speaking your truth in a way that is empowering, you know? So one of my clients who's on my Align course at the moment, she has really stepped up in her position at work and gone and spoken to her boss and, you know, told her she's unhappy, that she really needs something that's more, you know, invigorating in her job. And some amazing things have started to happen without her getting vulnerable with how she's feeling and speaking about it openly without really judging it, but then honoring it also by going and doing something about it, taking some action. Now she's in a position to be heard. Now she's in a position to turn that situation around and to get really clear on what she wants and to have no fear, right? Or I'm saying no fear, but less fear because she's resolute within herself. So my thing about being vulnerable is, and Brené Brown also says this, Brené Brown is a researcher who studied shame and vulnerability and empathy. And she basically discovered that, you know, without vulnerability, your ability to connect to people is on such a shallow level. You can't really connect to people in a way that is truly deep and authentic. I mean, you could connect, like you can have a chat and have lunch and do that thing, but without your ability to connect with your emotion and to express it in an authentic and honoring way, you're going to have trouble feeling like you're really connected to people. All right? If you're hiding emotions away, you're squashing them, you're not honoring what they're asking of you. You are listening to self-limiting beliefs inside, or you are, struggling to communicate in your relationships. Usually this stuff, you see it much more in families or in intimate relationships, where people really struggle to say what their truth is because they maybe have fear of being cut out. They maybe have fear of not being honoured or being misunderstood. They maybe are stuck in a dynamic where they have to show up as a particular kind of person. Like lots of the time is in families. When we go back to be with our family, we revert to the person that they think we are, right? We revert to the dynamic that we were as children in the family. You have to really get to know yourself in true vulnerability in order to really stand in your truth and stand as an adult and be like, no, actually, this is me today. I don't have to, fall into the format of where I fit within my family, right? And the same with your partner. Sometimes you see this in relationships where, in relationships, you see a lot of passive-aggressive behavior when a person's not able to be vulnerable and they're not able to really speak about what's going on for them. So, perhaps, I'm trying to think of a situation. Maybe you guys give me a situation to contemplate. But it could be something like, say someone's always getting home late from work and it's starting to really irritate you. And really the feeling is, or the feeling of thoughts could be, why are they so late? They're not really late from work. They're actually going somewhere else. They're going to the pub, or they're going to meet someone else, or whatever it is, and paranoia starts. And instead of being able to speak about it, there starts to be this passive aggressive thing that starts happening about the lateness, right? Instead of actually saying, I feel afraid. I feel like, you're not connecting with me. I feel like you're not present with me. I feel like you might leave, that kind of thing. I mean, that might sound really like EastEnders or something, but that's kind of the reality. So most of us, people who are working on themselves have to start learning to speak in a way that is authentic without blaming. Vulnerability, when you speak it, should sound like, this is about me. It should never sound like you've done something to me and this is all about you. It should sound like this is about me. Like your true vulnerability will say, I'm afraid, I'm scared, like there's fear here and I don't know what to do with it. And I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but this is hurting me. Can we do something about it? Like, can you meet me here? Now, you might not be met all times when you're being vulnerable. And, in a way that's okay, because there's other people who haven't reached their vulnerability yet. So they don't know how to do this conscious conversation. They don't know how to do it. But I would say you should check your inner circle. And if you have people in your inner circle, including in your relationship, where you can't speak your vulnerability, you really need to check what's going on. Like you need to check yourself, whether you're being authentic, and you need to check in with your partner, whether there's authenticity there. Because a lack of vulnerability will feed out into all of your relationships. It really will. So, start practicing speaking authentically about what's going on for you. And I would suggest, if you are a person who has trouble communicating vulnerability, that you find a safe space. You find somebody, right? It doesn't have to be me, but it can be a best friend. It can be, a son or daughter. It could be your partner if you're able to do those kind of conversations. It could be your mom. It could be anyone who you feel that you can go to and express something that's happening. I have so many people that come to me with their tendency to squash, let's say. So many people with negative thinking that is really taken over and pretends to be them. They've completely lost the connection to their light and their truth, and they're busy vomiting within themselves just a pile of shit over and over and over again. And it's simply because they're not really going deep enough, on lots of levels. Okay, so has anyone got any questions about vulnerability? I don't know if you're still here, Ibrahim, if you want to share a little bit. But yeah, so, actually there's another bit I want to add about vulnerability. Right, as I was talking about relationship, right? If you're trying to connect with someone and you notice they have an inability to be vulnerable, that's a red flag. Because if they can't be vulnerable at the beginning and share themselves openly, and I'm not saying openly to the point where you don't have any healthy boundaries, I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is, if the person can't really share who they are, then there's something in them they need to work on. There's some fear in them or a judgment around you that they need to look at. And so I'm sharing that with you in order to say, really, like when you start practicing your vulnerability and you start practicing how you're consciously communicating, right? How you're speaking to yourself, right? Because that's definitely part of reaching vulnerability. Because I'll tell you this, if there's parts of yourself that you don't like and you are berating inside, you will never reach them. And they will never give you the gifts that they're meant to. So practicing conscious communication includes yourself, absolutely. And then if you're meeting people, friends or in intimate relationships, and they're not able to open up fully to you, start to check yourself. Because it can either be that there's something in you where you are not a safe space, perhaps, right? Maybe your ability to be vulnerable is kind of at that level, and so they just meet you there. Or the person that you are trying to communicate with or attach yourself to in relationship just has an inability to be vulnerable with themselves. And I would say that if that's the case, then you probably shouldn't step forward, if you want a conscious relationship. If you don't, then I don't know why you're listening to me. But if that's what you want, be with somebody, trying to get my teeth back in, I'm tired. Be with someone who you can be your full self with, but you must learn about who you are and really honor that in your vulnerable state. Okay? So I needed to hear that. Lol. Yes, you did. And we chatted a lot about this already, didn't we? So yeah, so I hope that helped some. And if anyone has any questions, any of those of you on the replay who want to ask me a question about vulnerability and why it is key in relationships, is so key. It's key to the relationship with yourself. It's key to all relationships. So if any of you have questions, get in touch with me. I can give you a free 30-minute soul session where we can look at maybe where your vulnerability needs a little bit of a helping hand, let's say. All right. And if you're not following me, and wait a minute, if you don't know who I am, because you might not know, I'm Gail, and I'm a soul coach and an intuitive, and I help people to really navigate their inner world, to reconnect to their inner child. And the whole point really is so that you can connect to your soul voice and move your life forward in a soul-led, aligned way. Okay, that's why my course is called Align, because it's really about alignment, right? So I will love you and leave you guys. Feel free to message me and share this video if you know anyone who could do with a helping hand with vulnerability. All right, loves. Bye.